Okay, well, welcome to the week 4 of the 3D character modelling animation character workshop. Today's session is going to be all about texturing and UVs and a little bit of normals. But essentially what we're going to take you through in this session is basically things like how to apply a texture, different types of mapping, basic UV editing and effective texture placement, and a little bit about UVs. So that's kind of where we're at, really. Okay, so what we have here is that we have a scene which you should have got to the last stage, and what it is essentially is a mesh. You look at the mesh. What I've also got here is I've set my scene up to have the UV texture editor window, but also to have the material editor, because I'll mainly be dealing with this area today, but I just want to talk a little bit about this area as well. Okay, so the first thing I want to do really is talk a little bit about what UVs are. Now, UVs are basically the way that Maya's system to wrap textures around a character. So, for example, you've got it comes from the NURBS, the U and V in NURBS, but the U is the horizontal and the V is the vertical, but it's it's the direction that the texture is stretched over the actual character, or whatever it is that you're dealing with. But how that works when it comes to characters is there's two sort of different main methods that you can use to stretch textures, to edit the textures. One of them is to kind of use some projections, some basically planar, cylindrical, etc. projections to cut the mesh up, and another is to use a mixture of that and also editing tools and stitching and stuff. But we'll get to that in a bit. So the sort of first thing I want to really do is sort of start to get this ready for texturing. So what I'm going to do to start off with, and I can make as many projections up here as I want. I'm gonna if you look at the history, there's nothing there. I'm going to select all the faces in the character, and you notice that it's selected them in the UV texture editor window. And I'm going to come down to this create UVs. Now you can see I mentioned cylindrical mapping earlier. The spherical is automatic. Automatic stay away from really, because it's kind of quite a basic. Well, it's not basic. It's more for painting onto the character. But these two are the main ones that we'll be using today. But obviously there's lots of different things you can do. So let's look at some of the options in there. Okay, so I'm just going to reset those options. Now you notice I changed the axis that I'm basically projecting this from. So if I look at the character, you can see in the world's coordinate space that you've got the X, Y, Z there. And what I want to do is I want to just basically make myself an initial map so this isn't such a mess in here. The reason why this is such a mess is because any primitive that you start from, or we started from a polygon sort of face here, is manipulated, and you've got UVs on those characters on those primitives when you first make them. And you can see here that as I've modelled this character and messed around with it and cut bits off and add bits onto it and extruded and what have you, the UVs are a real mess here. So you can actually see if I actually what I'll do before I start putting a map on. One thing that you also do before I start doing this, to make it a bit easier for you to see what's going on, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use something called checkered texture. So I'm going to make myself a new Lambert material. Now I don't touch Lambert 1 here, because Lambert 1 is the material that's applied to everything when it's first made, and we don't want to be editing that, we'll just leave that as it is. So I make Lambert 2 here, and if I double click on it, let's just get rid of that for a second. Get rid of that for a second as well. What I want to do to enable me to start to understand what's going on, and hopefully enable you to start understanding what's going on, is I'm going to apply something called a checkered texture. So if you're looking here, I've basically gone into the color node here, and I'm going to apply a checkered texture onto this character. Sorry, onto the material. Now at the moment, if I just go back out of this mode, I'm just going to middle mouse button and drag and drop that onto there. Now you can't see anything that's happened to it. There was a slight change there, and the reason why that's the case is because you need to turn on the make sure it's on there. grabbing that, grab those, apply selected objects. I know why it is. What's happening here is I'm turning the texture on, but because there's a lack of mapping on the character, so what I'm going to do, I am going to put the map on here. So if I want to project this map from, I'll explain what's going on there in a second, from the Y axis, the Z axis, project that. Some interesting stuff going on here. I'm then going to grab these faces and apply this to the faces. I also know what's going on here. If I put the high quality render on, object mode. Okay, there's something quite strange going on with this. Just give me a second. Okay, I found what the problem is. Basically, what's going on here is I've applied my texture material, and you can see what's actually happened is it's applying it to certain parts of the body. Now, this is quite useful. This has happened actually, because if I click on this, I tried the different methods to see what the problem was. Anyway, I'd applied some mapping before this, if you hadn't done any mapping, but essentially what the problem here is, if I come down to this thing called UV sets, you'll notice there's actually two mapping channels here. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come up here just for the time being. I'll explain what they are in a second. But if I come to the UV set editor window and delete this second channel, you can see that the checkerboard texture comes onto the character. Now what's going on there is I'll just try and explain what's happened there. It's kind of a happy accident in some ways, because I was going to talk about this, but I'd forgotten that I'd put that on there. Silly me. Anyway, what's going on here is when you apply a texture, when you apply a projection. So if I bring the projections back up here, if I apply a planar map, and when I click the options box in here, you'll notice down here there's something called UV sets. Now, the way I like to think about it is, if you've got like beer barrels, this UV set is a barrel, okay, and each projection you apply. So I've already applied a planar projection, but let me do another one. So let me just, before I make another one, so if I make sure that's not on, and I'll select some faces. So let's also let's cut the head off. So if I grab the head, so if I just try and be a bit more accurate in my selection, there we go. Just double check that. So at the moment we've got this head. I'm just checking the it's put kind of nicely around the neck. Okay, so I want to cut this head off on my projection. So at the moment we've got a planar projection going across everything, but I want to start to spread this head out really. So if I make sure that's not selected, if I project that, okay, you can see what we've got here is we've got a projection on the character. Now this is kind of, you can see if I can actually stretch these textures out, and you can see it's making the head smaller here. Just make that a bit smaller, a bit bigger. If I actually click away from this and select it, you can see that if I just go to my object mode and select it, you can see under the UVs here, we've now got a messy UV setup here. I've cut the head off, but I've got two types of projection. So if I come into my planar projection here and reselect it, I can actually move this head around. Okay, so I'm going to take it off to the side for the second, because we're going to deal with that in a minute. You'll also notice, and it's something that I kind of was going to talk to you a little bit more about. At the moment, we haven't got an even distribution of the checker texture. Now, what we aim to do at the very early stages when we're texturing is spread our texture evenly across the whole character. Now, obviously, this square box here is the same as this size square white box here. Now, the problem with that is we're stretching the same. If we put a texture onto this character, we're stretching that texture over this area, over 1, 2, 3, 4 deep by 5 or 6 wide. We're stretching that texture over that big area, whereas up here you can see there's much more detail in the in the area. So what you're aiming for really is in areas where you need detail, like the face is definitely a high detail area, but you want to try and get an even spread of these checker textures. So what I'm also going to do is I'm going to come into my material editor, into my working area down here. I'm just going to the attribute editor by pressing Ctrl A. I also want to see this repeat UVs. Now, I want to make them the similar size on both, but what I'm going to do first of all, I'm going to make this 15 by 15, like so. Obviously that changes, it doesn't change the mapping, it changes the actual, it only changes the actual texture that you're applying to it. So basically I've made those square textures smaller and a higher res, but I want to be working with a reasonable amount. Now obviously this head is now far too detailed, but you know, now if I select it and come over here, okay, so what I would like to also say is, depending on your texture that you're applying to it, you need to change the quality of the way that you can view this. So obviously you've got low texture. Now I've already put it, I think the default is here, and you can see it's not very nice texturing on here. So if I take that to high quality render, or even viewport render, which kind of renders depth of field and ambient occlusion and all those kind of other things, but uses hardware rendering. But if we leave it on high quality for the time being, that's good enough for what we need it. Okay, so now I'm gonna start cutting his head up a little bit. Now, what I'd like to do is I'd like to stretch it out and make it kind of, if you imagine like the Hannibal Lecter, if I was Hannibal Lecter and I was gonna cut the back of his head and start stretching it out. Now, what I want to do really is I want to, rather than using a planar planar projection like I've just used, what I want to do is I want to grab these faces. Now I grab them in here to make it a bit easier for myself. So you notice I move it over to here to make it easier. And what I think I plan on doing is using a separate texture for the actual head. So I'm going to use this square box to the side of it, which isn't part of the main texture here, to enable me to work with this as a separate texture material. Sorry, texture, an separate JPEG or even a TIFF. So I'm actually going to use something called cylindrical mapping now. So if I just reset those, and then again I don't want to create a new set. So if I project that, now you can see what's happened. It's kind of a bit of a bizarre thing here. So we've got this cylindrical mapping which I can stretch all the way around it. So I'm just going to stretch this all the way around. So I want the map to go all the way around. Okay. Now obviously it's brought it back to the main area here, and this needs some tidying up. So what I'm also going to do is I'm going to move the actual project. Actually, if I just try and get that straight, so like so. I also want to move it. So I'm okay with that at the moment. It's roughly in the right position, but you see what we've got some issues up here with the actual with the UV placements. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this tool here, right, which basically, I can't remember what it's called, but it's called Move UV Shell Tool, and I'm going to move it across again, back across. So we've used the what's the word? The cylindrical mapping, and it's done a reasonably good job there, but we need to start tidying this up a little bit more. So I'm just going to come into here and maximise this. So I just want to find out what's going on with these UVs. So if I just move these up here like this and see where we've got problems, like so. We might have a problem down here actually. No, that looks reasonably okay. It's kind of a strange setup with this kind of extra face. I'll just check out where the go to edge and check out where the other edge is. It's there, so it needs to sort of flip itself around. So what I want to do now is I'm going to come in and I'm going to go to my UV mode, and I'm going to select a few of these UVs on the edge, and I'm going to start sort of straightening them up a little bit. So I'm selecting this area here. So if I just come in and go for these UVs, let me just turn off the border edge tool. Turn that off just to make it a bit easier for myself. So if I come in here and I know I'm going to need these here. So if I grab those, and if I just flatten them for the time being, there's still some slight issues there, but if I flatten those and then zoom into this area. So I'm just going to bring these down. Actually, if you notice what I've done is I pressed 3 and 2 and 1. Now that's actually adding a smooth to the actual UVs, which is not what we want really. We want to make sure that we can see exactly what's going on. So I've just changed my viewport here. I think, yep, there we go. That one comes down here. That one comes down here. Just so I can actually see what's going on a bit easier rather than having to mess around a bit more. So I'm just going to select these and start to tidy it up a little bit. Now, it does seem a bit weird me saying tidying up because it feels like I'm really obsessed with it being tidy. But actually, this is where you need in situations like this, you do need to start being quite tidy, because it just enables you to have a good placement of the UVs essentially. So if I, oh, wrong button, undo that, meant to press that button. Okay, I'm just going to figure out what's going on here and see whether I need to start cutting this away. I perhaps should have cut this out. So if I snap this over here, like so, and that should really be, let's have a look here. Actually, what I'll do is I'll snap this further down, get this down there, and I'll take this down here, like so. So what we're trying to do, I'll figure that out a bit later. You see, there's this sort of, you can often get slight sort of issues with how you're working with stuff. So if I just kind of try and figure out what's going on, like so. So I'm just going to select these at the top now, and I'm going to flatten them. So like so. Okay, now what I'm going to just do this again. It does seem a little bit overly, what's the word, concerned about it being tidy. So anyway, but let's just do that. Do that, and then that, and then that. Okay, right. Now what you can also then do is that there's some really useful tools in here. So if I select what's inside this mesh now, there's these sort of tools up here called the Smooth UV tool, which is very, very impressive. So if I select this and then and move this unfold with the virtual slider backwards and forwards, what's actually happening is it's kind of using an algorithm to kind of spread this texture out. If I just come back into my my face, and I'll do it at the same time as showing you what's going on here. So you can see what it's doing is it's enabling me to spread out these these UVs. So if I look in here, now obviously problematic areas were the chin. There's an underhang there, and I've used a basic projection on there. So I think the what you're essentially doing here is you're figuring out certain areas and you're relaxing the UV. So this is the ear, for example. This is a really good one to do. At the moment, what we've got is a lot of very complicated geometry in a very what's the word, in a very tight space. So if you go in and select certain things and unfold and relax, what you can find is you can spread that information out quite effectively. What you can also do, if I just try, there's a few of the sort of like tools that you can use. This tool here, which basically unfolds selected UVs. So it's I mean, it doesn't always work in the way that you want it to, but it does often do a really good job. So this tool in particular, this Smooth UV tool, is particularly useful for spreading out your verts in a very organised way. Sorry, not verts, your UVs. And the advantage is you can select certain areas and keep working on it until you're happy with what you're getting. So again, these two tools work in conjunction with each other, but it's there to spread everything out. So if you remember what it looked like when I first started doing this, it was a bit more of a mess than it is now. And obviously, you're going in here and sort of manipulating these on a polygon, UV by UV basis is going to be a problem. So this is a very useful tool to. Okay, one of the problems here is that this line is such a mess because of the way that the character is designed. Now, if you look at the top of here, now it's a hell of a mess up here with how it's stretched across. Now, obviously, you can design them in certain ways. I mean, this design here is sort of designed to sort of the verts go all the way around. The texture is stretched all the way around it. But what I want to do, just to sort of make my life a little bit easier at this point, is go and get this the messy area here and make sure I've got the crown of the character. And you can see this is the messy area here as well. You can see why it's messy because it's sort of stretched all over the place. But I'm going to go for a planar mapping on this, and I'm going to project from the top downwards. So I'm going to go for the y-axis. Okay. Now, obviously, that's kind of still slightly problematic here, and I'm going to make sure these are similar-ish size. So if I just go in here and yeah, they're similar-ish. And again, I'll just move it off over here, like so. So if I come back into this now, so what we've got here is I'm just going to check that these UVs are the same, right? So if I should go to my edge mode. If I select a certain edge, you can see that's where I've cut it. And what I'm attempting to do here is I need to now merge these together in as effective a way as possible. So I'm going to basically manipulate both of them, I'm going to use this tool, which I'm just going to sort of stretch this edge round like so, so you can see I'm going to attempt to keep the same type of spacing. Okay, you're never going to get it kind of perfect, because it's gonna it's quite a fiddly job, really. I'm just going to attempt to get it close. Okay, no, it's always going to be a problem in these types of areas. Okay, so I've got this going on here now. Just kind of, if I go to my edge mode and select an edge like so, get a bit closer, an edge like so. All I've done here is I'm selecting the top edge of this, right? And I want to merge these two edges together. Okay, I basically use the projection to cut it up, and now I'm gonna weld them back together again, because this is a border edge, and you're gonna have problems with texturing with border edges. If I show you by turning the border edge on, where is it? There we go. So border edges around there. So I've selected one of the edge, and I'm going to use this tool, which is basically to merge them together. So if I press G to repeat the last tool, you can see what I'm starting to do now is I'm starting to join these edges together. Now you get into problems in these kind of areas, because obviously we're basically wrapping this all the way around the character. So if you're never going to easily join everything, but this is called well, it's called UVing. We're actually UVing now. So I've joined these areas here. Now if I just come in and go to my, actually I'm going to go to my UV mode and go back to normal selection. So I'm going to continue to spread these little fellas out. Now obviously it's going to be quite tricky to make sure that you get everything, because it's a matter of, you know, spreading them out. So we're going to have even texture placement is what you're looking for. So what you're looking for is a nice smooth. Now obviously when you get down to this corner, you're going to have more problems, and you don't really want to start stretching these too much around. So, I mean, obviously you want to try and keep it as neat as possible, but you do get into problems which is, you know, sometimes a bit difficult to resolve. Anyway, so if I come in and just weld a few of these as well, so if I come into my edge mode and grab that, and then again weld that together, press G to repeat the last tool, and let's see, right, we're getting into immediate problems here. But if I do the same types of thing up here, actually what I could just do is just press this, press G, let's see if I can grab that, press G. Okay, we are seriously getting into problems here. Now if I come in again with the problematic areas, and let's just select all these UVs, and what I'll do is I'll use that smooth tool again. So if I use the here we go, the unfold there. Now you can see it's starting to spread it out a bit more evenly, but again we're still getting into some sort of problems over here. So again, if I just X, isn't it? X, no, not X. If I press V and snap, it still doesn't like it. I'll just do it by eye for the time being. So what I'm attempting to do is I'm attempting to fit this. Grab these and move them all across to fit this into my texture, my square texture. So I'll roughly do this. So you can see this is quite a jiggly process. It's, you know, it looks a little bit of a mess at the top. So it's kind of similar to what I was doing before, if you remember, but it's not quite as elegant as it could be. It's a matter of spending a bit more time. I won't spend too much time on that because I've kind of shown you the sort of main tools I'd like to show you, but it's kind of, you know, quite useful. What I'm also want to do now, actually, if I just before I do that, I'll make it as reasonable as I possibly can. So if I grab the whole thing, I'm just going to scale the UVs down a bit. There we go, so it's going to be inside. Ooh, here we go, it's a strange scaling thing going on. Okay, if I just kind of stretch it, so it's going to be roughly the right size, like so. Scaling it, there we go. Okay, so it's going to be inside the texture window area. And what I can do, I can actually go to polygons and take a snapshot of this, and it'll save me a 256 by 256, which is a power of 2 image. I can put it into JPEG. Where is it? JPEG. Save that, and it'll basically save me this actual image, which I can take into Photoshop and paint over that face now with a with a painting package like Photoshop. Okay. Anyway, what I also want to do at the moment, so you can see I've got my texture placement over my face at the moment is reasonable. Okay, it's kind of quite a little bit of a mess, but it's kind of I've tried to spread them out as evenly as possible. What I also want to do is start cutting the hands up. So if I come back into my my character, now this time I'm gonna rather than using a projection, what I think I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go in, get an edge, double click on that edge. Let's get that one. Hang on a minute. Okay, so just check that I've got all the way around there, which I have. He says, don't worry. Oh no, there's a couple more there, and there. Interestingly, I've just noticed I've got a hole in my mesh. You can see down here, there's some slight holes that I need an extra line coming down here in edge loop, but I won't worry about that at the moment. It's just a little bit frustrating, to be honest. You can see there's like a little hole, something that I've missed in the modelling process. So if I go around here, so what I'm also going to do now is rather than kind of using the planar projection, I'm just going to cut this hand off. So if I use this cut tool here, which is cutting along selected edges, now what I can do, I can use this tool, which is a shell selection tool, and I assume I've cut this. There we go, I've cut this hand off. If I grab this hand, I can actually move it away now from the actual character. Now it's quite. I've shown you how to do this, but it's not incredibly useful actually, because I've just realised of something. If I just undo that before I cut it, get rid of it before I cut it. I'll show you how to cut the top and bottom of it first. So if I grab the faces of this little fella, like so, I'm going to use a projection. So I'm going to use a planar projection, but this time from the top, which is the y-axis. There we go. Project. I'm going to scale this little fella down. So if I just ironically scale that one up there, and then let's move it over here somewhere. So what I want to do now is I want to go around the edge loop of this. So if I come in and go to the edge, select my edge, so it's similar to what I was doing a second ago. So if I double click on the edge, it selects around all the edge loop. Okay. Unfortunately, it goes right around the character, which is not what I want to do. So if I just come in and deselect those edges. Okay, so I don't want that one either. But what I do want to do is I want to follow that edge right the way around and basically again do a Hannibal Lecter and cut certain parts of it out. So again around here, so I just come around and have a look at this. Do that out of the way for a second. Okay, so the line comes down here, but I want it to continue along the actual thumb of the character, because I want to cut the whole character up here. So I'm going to double click on that, which brings it all the way around to here. I then want to make sure I join up this and this line here, so I'm just going to choose a way of doing that. So there we go. So I've got the edge here, and I'm going to cut it like so. And also, if I use this shell selection tool here, I'll come back into my hand because I've cut half of it. So if I grab that, I can move the top and the bottom of the hand separately. Now the reason why I want to do this is because obviously with the hand, now it's kind of quite useful to have them joined, but obviously the top and bottom of the hands are different. So I'm going to use the flipping tools like so to move them, so we can start getting a better texture placement. So if I make them reasonable size there, grab them both and then scale them a bit more. So don't forget I'm using the UVs here, like so. I can put more detail into those hands by messing around by doing that. Also the other side, I don't really need to show you the side, but you do the same thing with the other side. Also I want to cut the feet off, so again what I might do here again for quickness is come in and go to my face view, grab some of the faces, make sure that I haven't got the ones that I don't need, like so. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Actually what I might do, Actually, no, it's probably easier. This is quite a complicated selection here because you've got an awful lot of verts and polygons and things to worry about. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to my edge mode, double click on that, the bottom of his sock here. That should, if I go to my wireframe even, there we go, I've selected the edge loop, which it has, just to check that. Now I'm going to use the cut tool again, so where are we? Cut tool, there we go, cut that. And again, if I come back into my foot, so if I go to my UVs and use this tool to select the shell of the UVs, it's selected everything within there. It hasn't selected the laces, which I need to do as well. Let me just grab the laces as well, like so. Make sure I've got all those. Yeah. Oh, it's gone for all of it. It's because of part of the other one. I've cut that one out, but I've not cut the laces. I should have perhaps used the. Actually, what I'll do is I'll use the face again. So if I come in and get my faces, and I'll go to my orthographic front view and select those faces like so, and then delete the other ones. So if I go back to my perspective view, so I'll include the socks, and I can deal with that in a second if I want to undo some of my selection. So again, just have a quick check. Yep, that looks about right to me. Okay, planar projection. This time I'm going to do it from the top, because obviously the main element of texture in here is going to be from the top. So if I go planar projection again from the top, and again if I just scale it up to make it a lot smaller, so you can see it's actually cut the foot off here. And if I move the little fella down to this area, and I'll just scale it up a little bit more, like so. Okay, that'll do for now. Yeah. So what I've done there is I've started to cut this character up. Okay, I've started to cut it up, and I'm starting to. Then what I can do is, when I've got that to a reasonable stage, I can then make my UV snapshot and actually then paint over my character, and that enables me to get a fuller placement essentially, and it enables me to kind of almost like paint it exactly where I want it to be. There's certain things that I also need to do. So other things like if I come into my faces here, also if I go to my object mode again. Okay, so the things I can do here as well. At the moment, you can see that my sorry, just give me a second. There we go. Yeah, it's working. I've projected this from the top, so you can see that because this basically is what is essentially a cylinder. I've cut the bottom and the top of it off. You can see they're not evenly spread, these texture placements, so these UVs. So what I can do is I can come in and use this tool like so, and it helps me spread out the UVs effectively. I can also use, if you remember before, this smooth and relax. So if I come in and actually spread them out, and relax the edges and spread them out again, like so, I'm starting to spread out this character in a way which enables me to then start paint on that, and it's a much more effective way of painting the character. So again, I'll try this one on this. Oh, it's not worked at all. The reason why it's not worked here is because I need to cut this up as well. I will show you that now because I've been talking for long enough already. But I need to go and select the edge loop around the edge of the character, cut it, basically start cutting this little fella up, and then using the welding tools and things to enable me, if I wanted a seamless texture placement, which to be fair is mainly important around the head. It's got to be honest. I would start doing that. That's kind of enough of that for now. Let me just open another scene and show you where you get to with using those tools. Okay, so what you can see here is the scene that's kind of the same character, with the if I maximise this, with the UVs spread out a little bit more. You see, I've not done the stitching of the head there, but you can see that it's very similar. And what I've done is I've basically used, if I just grab these again and move them out of the way. Oh, sorry. My mistake. UVs, and grab some of these UVs. Okay. Well, yeah, not letting me for some reason. But you can see where it's got is I've taken a UV snapshot and I have made a texture that goes around it. Now I've bleeded the edges of the texture, so you can see that's actually a picture of my hand. And I've used Photoshop to organise some of those textures. And you can come in here and you can actually grab UVs. Make sure it's on the select tool here. Grab UVs and move them around, and you can see in the actual character. Let me go for something on the where you can see it. So let's go for there we go. Let's get a UV here. So you can see here, if I zoom into this, that I've got myself a UV here, and I can actually move the texture around. And it's a very effective way of showing you how UVs actually work. But obviously, you're better doing some of that work within Photoshop and spreading this stuff out and basically taking it in and manipulating it. This is an acquired art UV, and there's no kind of right and wrong ways to do it. But you can see I've got a reasonable texture of the character. I could probably spend an awful lot more time on the face. That's kind of one of the areas that I probably would spend more time on. But from a matter of how you're stretching the texture across, this is kind of effective. Now, what I haven't got here is the checkered texture, and what I've done is I've gone from a checkered texture to kind of give me a rough idea, and I've then started adding the real texture and enable me to kind of understand what's going on. So you can see if I go to the object mode, the fingers, you start to manipulate them, put in fingernails and stuff like that. The last thing I want to sort of talk to you about now is normals. Okay, normals are essentially a technical term associated with how Maya shades and renders meshes. Basically, they're much more widely used in lower poly characters like games characters and stuff, but they can simulate hard and smooth surfaces by working out how the shaders work with the renderer, and it enables you to kind of smooth and harden things. But let me show you what they are first. I mean, it's a little bit confusing, to be fair. So if I go to my display menu, and let's go to my polygons, let me just grab this and put normals on here. So there's two different types of normals. Face normals are mainly to show you which direction a face is facing, and the vertex normals are what you edit. So it's a little bit confusing, but let's just turn the face normals on. So what you've got here is a wire of green normals, and what you've got really is essentially each face has got a normal, and it's pointing out from the face. Now, if some of those faces may or may not be upside down. So, for example, if you've been modelling half of your character and you've flipped it and you haven't sorted the normals out, it's quite possible that you have got half of your mesh, so your right hand side or your left hand side of your mesh, one of them could be facing inwards and one could be facing outwards, the faces, because faces aren't double-sided, they mainly have one side. Now, if that's the case, you might get a strange line down the centre of your character, and sort of a line like this where you got problems with the normals. Now, there are ways to manipulate this. So I've turned them on. Actually, what I'm going to do is if I go to my display again and my polygons, and then let's make them a bit smaller. So if I normal size, there we go. I'm just going to set that down to, let's go for 1, just to make it a bit easier for me, because it looks a bit too much of a manic mess. So I've taken my normals down because obviously there were far too many. And you can start to see that these are all okay because they're facing outwards, and the head looks okay. So it looks pretty okay, really. Okay, so what I'm going to do first, I need to unlock them. So if I come into my normals menu here, like so, and unlock my normals. Okay, so nothing's happened there. You have to unlock them before you start editing them. I'm going to set them to, actually if I go to my object mode and set to face, okay, what you can see is that it's kind of messed, well, I'll just show you, so just show you, I've got face, set to face, and then average. Right, see, I'm zoomed in. I'm going to press through these buttons and show you what's actually happening. So at the moment, I've averaged these normals out. So if I go to my object mode again, you can see we've got some really strange shading things going on now. Can you see this? It's kind of got weird stuff going on, and certainly around areas that you expect to be sharp or smooth, then you start getting some sort of weird anomalies. So what you need to do, if I set them to face, you can see, I'll show you again, show what happens. That is basically saying there's no normal editing going on. And I'm going to smooth it, and then I'm going to harden certain areas. So if I go to my faces again, like so, I'm going to soften the edges, okay, on the character, which should make it nice and soft. And then certain areas, like for example, well, it depends on what you're doing, but certain areas on the character are going to need to be made harder. So, and it's kind of, if I come in here and double click one of these edge loops, and I'm going to harden that edge. I'm also going to harden this edge. Harden edge. Now watch what happens when I press this hard edge. Do you see what happened? It changed the shading, because obviously on the hard edge you want it to, the shading doesn't reflect around the corners, and you want it to kind of, you know, you want it to be able to, basically on sharp things you want them to have hard edges. So again, I'm going to come in here, I'm going to select that edge loop, hard edge, so at the very bottom press hard edge. I won't do all of it, but certainly at the bottoms of things we want it to be sharp, hard edge. So what I'm doing is I'm going around the character, now obviously around the neck of the character. Let's have a look where that is. If I press 3 on that to just double check, there we go, I'm quite happy with that, hard edge, hard edge. It can be quite difficult to understand what's going on sometimes because you've got too many. Again, hard edge, like so. Now, obviously, the areas in the mouth, in the face that you're going to need hard edges is anywhere, you know, certainly around the eyes. Hard edge, and normally around the lips, but that depends really. But I would probably recommend a hard edge, and possibly around the edge of the ear. Again, hard edge. You can see it's sharpened it. It depends on what you want to do. So you can see this kind of like bizarre shading going on around the ear. If I press the hard edge button, it gets rid of it. But then again, you've got a nice sharp hard edge. So if I just go to my object mode here and just click away from it, you can see it's kind of resolved a few of the. You might want to do it across that bit there, but you get this kind of quite sharp ear thing going on. But you can kind of get the idea now what I'm sort of working with. And certainly when I press smooth, you can see because I've organised the mesh and I wanted like a polo neck, and it's made it kind of nice shading around there. Also, it's kind of worked quite well because I've put smooth on top of it around the ear. It kind of, you know, it's kind of worked quite well there. But if you look at the differences now between the shading on, it's kind of hard to see really because it's not that amazing, but it's there is a difference with the shading on the feet. So basically, what I've gone through now is it's kind of is as much as you need to know really at this stage. Basically, for you know, what you need to do really now. Well, I'll just, you know, it's kind of basically you need to get to this kind of level with the textured character. You've edited the UVs. I've made sure the normals are okay. Made sure all the faces are pointing in the right direction, and it's ready to go really. So this is kind of ready to rig. You just need to make sure that you delete history and save. So if I won't actually save because I've saved it already, but basically delete history, save, freeze transformations and reset transformations, get a nice clean model and save it as something like ready to start rigging or something. But essentially, I'd like everyone to get to this stage by the end of the week, if possible. So good luck, and you know, good luck anyway. So okay.